Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Todd, and I represent Ward 4 on the Council of the District of Columbia. Thank you for joining us here today with our four-legged friends at the Humane Rescue Alliance right here in Ward 4. Thank you to the Humane Rescue Alliance for hosting us and being a partner in this work. I want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Mary Che, who represents Ward 3 on the Council of the District of Columbia, and HRA CEO Lisa LaFontaine. We called you here today to discuss a critical piece of emergency legislation, the Extreme Weather Protection for Animals Emergency Amendment Act of 2017, also known as Momma's Law. I've just come from City Hall where I introduced this emergency legislation at the DC Council's legislative meeting, and I am very pleased to say that it passed the council with unanimous support. The law, which takes effect immediately upon the mayor's signature, establishes temporary protections from extreme cold weather for dogs in the District of Columbia. Despite the fact that we are currently experiencing very warm weather, approximately 70 degrees today, we know that temperatures can suddenly drop dangerously low, exposing dogs to hazardous and inhumane conditions if left outdoors for too long. This emergency measure fills critical gaps in existing law that were exposed last month when Momma, a pit bull in Petworth, was left outdoors in frigid temperatures for days. The conditions Momma faced were clearly inhumane. Her shelter provided inadequate protection from the severe cold spell we were experiencing. However, existing law did not provide the Humane Rescue Alliance with the authority to sanction her owner and provide her with the proper care. This emergency action remedies that. Because it is an emergency bill, this law will only remain in effect for 90 days, enough time to get through the winter and ensure our dogs have the necessary protections in place until permanent legislation can be enacted. It amends DC Code section on animal welfare to define protection from the weather as providing access to shelter that is suitable for the age, condition, size, and type of each dog by doing the following: accounting for the space needed for each dog and ensuring that the space is safe and protects the dog from injury, rain, sleet, snow, hail, the adverse effects of cold, physical suffering, and impairment on health. It requires outdoor dog shelters to be raised at least 4 inches from the ground, include a heat-retaining, moisture-wicking substance such as straw, and have a covered wind block. These requirements take effect when the mayor declares a cold emergency alert. Failure to comply with these requirements will be punishable by a fine of up to $250 to be implemented by the Humane Rescue Alliance's humane law enforcement officers. All of these details are available in the press release being circulated now. And in crafting these measures, I've worked closely with the Humane Rescue Alliance, our city's authority on animal welfare. I would like to thank them for contributing their advocacy and expertise on this effort and for their commitment to protecting the health and safety of animals in the District of Columbia. I would also like to thank the DC Department of Health for providing guidance on this legislation and ensuring it conforms with existing rules and regulations. I would now like to offer my colleague Mary Che, Councilmember from Ward 3, the opportunity to say hello.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Todd. You know, a few years ago when we passed the Animal Welfare Act, it was an omnibus act and it had many, many provisions, and I think greatly strengthened the law to protect animals in the District of Columbia. But as is inevitably the case, no law is perfect, and there are often gaps that we need to fill, and this was one that we saw a need to fill, and with this emergency legislation, we will fill it. This will get us through the winter, but there are other conditions where animals may suffer greatly, and so we need to use this time, this 90 days, to reconvene, if you will, and review many of the provisions of the Animal Welfare Act and see where there are other gaps and attempt to fill those also. As many of you know, and we're standing here at the Humane Rescue Alliance, so I don't have to tell you, but animals suffer severely when their conditions, particularly extremely hot and extremely cold weather, and they're left outside to fend for themselves. And that's unacceptable. And as a community, we don't accept that. And so we want to make sure that the law is clear that we don't accept that. And this emergency, as I said, will give us the time to review yet again. And we invite the Humane Rescue Alliance and anybody else who is aware of this. If you see, as you read through that law, and it's a very extensive law, if you see from your own experiences other areas where we can make improvements, we always want to do that. So thank you, Councilmember Todd, and I look forward to the next step after this.
Thank you, Councilmember Che. I would like to invite Lisa LaFontaine, the President and CEO of the Humane Rescue Alliance.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll keep my remarks brief, but first of all, I want to thank Council Members Todd and Che, because we have a lot of tools at our disposal to protect animals in the district, but we really can't do our work without strong city leadership, and we are about as lucky as an organization can be to have these two council members and others who care so deeply about animals. So I want to thank you both very much for not only this, but for your many years of support. So one thing I want to mention is that we're the organization that enforces DC's animal cruelty laws, and our Director of Humane Law Enforcement, Zita Masananti, is here today. She leads a team of 5 officers who are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to protect animals from cruelty and harm. And as the council member said, we have overall very good legislation, but there are always gaps, there are always opportunities to improve. And this bill continues to strengthen the already existing laws. You know, it goes without saying that at the Humane Rescue Alliance, we believe that companion animals should live indoors. If Zita and I had our way, all dogs and cats would be in homes, under blankets, watching TV at night. But as we always say, we can't create a law that makes people care. So we can create a law that sets standards that are robust so that animals don't have to suffer. And the nice thing about this is that with the old law, there was a phrase for adequate shelter, but adequate shelter was never properly defined. And so we didn't have the tools we needed to fully protect Momma in this case. However, now, with the wording of this legislation, proper shelter is very exquisitely defined. And so you can rest assured that we'll now have the tools to swoop in situations like this in the future. And you know, sometimes it takes an incident like this to raise awareness among the community that laws can be improved. And that's one of the nice things that we know from doing this work, is that the Humane Rescue Alliance has a community of animal lovers who are our eyes and ears. There are only 160 or so of us, but we have a community of 600,000 people who are keeping their eyes out and looking after animals and calling us. And we applaud that, and we want that to keep coming. So I'd like to thank Council Members Todd and Che once again, and ask if anybody has any questions for any of us.
Councilmember Todd, something that Chairman Mendelson raised today was, he essentially said, doesn't DC already have robust animal welfare laws? Why do we need this law? And could you talk about how you respond to that?
No, absolutely. And I think I said it in my remarks on the dais this afternoon. We have some of the most robust laws in the country, but we realized very clearly that adequate shelter was not defined in our current law, and so that was one of the reasons that we introduced the legislation. Also, what this bill will do, it will, when the mayor calls for a cold emergency alert, it will require that the dogs have adequate shelter or be taken inside. And if they're going to remain outside, they would have to fall within the definition of adequate shelter: 4 inches off of the ground, a wick-based straw on the interior, a wind flap to keep the wind from entering the dog's house. All right. Thank you, everybody.
The dogs support this.
Yes, they do.
So Dixie.
Summertime heat issues.
So as the
Is that in
council
the
members
law?
said, this is a temporary legislation. It lasts 90 days, and it gives us the time to be really thoughtful about issues of heat. I think if we were to ask Zita, we actually have more instances of heat emergency in the district, and now with this 90 days, we have time to write a really robust law that protects in those circumstances too. So please say hi to Dixie. She's looking for a home. Is there one more question? Sure.
How can concerned citizens in the district support this
legislation in your efforts going forward? As you mentioned, there are 600,000 residents that are the eyes and ears seeing these issues every day.
I think a huge opportunity. So the council's committee on health will have a hearing. I have a commitment from the chair of that committee, and it's really going to be incumbent upon the advocacy community. Certainly, we'll work with the HRA, the Department of Health, but we want all of our friends and neighbors to come out to that hearing and talk about how important this piece of legislation is. And we expect that we'll address instances in extreme heat, just as we are in an extreme cold. And we may also find other things that we need to address at the hearing. So I'm looking forward to having a robust conversation, but I thought it was important that we get this bill put in place to address any concerns for the next 90 days, just to get us through the winter. All right, thanks everybody. I think we're going to take a tour now, right?
Yeah, come
Yes.
on. Anybody that wants to see the
Right.
animals, adopt the animals, take
Councilmember Todd,
pictures.
I just want one question.
Those aren't the figures that I had. Hi, honey. Hi, honey.
Treats. Oh my goodness. Hi, Bruno. Good boy. There you go.
That's your dog.
This is Pearl. You said Pearl.
Crazy.
I know. We're gonna make sure everybody knows you're here.
Pearl a treatment?
Oh, they're picky here.
I know. What about this time? Maybe not.
She just wants to pet.
I know.
She just wants to pet.
Beautiful.